Of the early echo. I can't believe it's November already, and we're ready to move on to winter weather. So welcome. We are recording today's session. This will be on our Canvas page for you to access at a later date, as well as it gives us information to improve these sessions. Echo, as if you've never joined, it is an interactive community, so please put comments into the chat, raise your hand, have an open discussion about this. We will be doing a case narrative. That's a great way to solidify any information, receive information about cases that you're working on, and just a great way to learn from everybody else who is on that call. As we're talking about anything, please remember to protect individual privacy, so avoid any identifiable information. If you have any questions, reach out to a hub member. We all have an asterisk in front of our name and we'll be able to answer any of your questions. If you'll take a minute and rename your profile so that we know who is on the call, so our presenters know who's on the call, you can reach out to other participants on the call. We've all been on Zoom for quite a few years, so know probably how to raise our hand and put information into the chat. But here's a slide of how you can do that if you still need that information. Pre-registering for those echo sessions, we get those materials to you in advance, send out any announcements. So if you want to pre-register, you can send us an email at earlyecho@usu.edu. We are starting our registration for our 2023 echo sessions. Our network will be covering topics around feeding, behavior, some sleep, communication, and autism. So make sure to register and join us starting in 2023. We do send out certificate of attendance after you fill out the survey. So the survey will come today or tomorrow. Be sure to check your junk and spam email folders. But that's how we maintain these sessions free of charge and get some great quality for that. So remember to fill out those surveys, and that's how we send out this certificates at the end of it. Canvas is the platform we use to store information on. If you need access to Canvas, please reach out to earlyecho@usu.edu and we'll resend an invite. Case studies are always just a great way to gain information. I'm really excited today. Caitlin Topham is the mom a family member who is going to be sharing us her case, and hopefully we'll get some great ideas back. We do have information on our social media, so if you want to take a minute to follow us on that, we'll put resources on there. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to turn the time over to Ty Aller and Sheila Anderson to talk to us about what they have learned.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, y'all. Give me just 1 second to pull up the slides and then we'll jump into a little bit of an introduction. All right. I think everyone should be able to see our slides now. Is that true? Head nods? Yep. All right. Perfect. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Dr. Ty Aller. I actually work here at the Institute for Disability Research, Policy, and Practice as a researcher. And this is my co-presenter, Dr. Sheila Anderson, who is faculty at Weber State University. Just wanted to thank everyone for being here and give you a brief introduction to what our presentation is going to be about. Today, we're going to kind of talk through ways to consider how to take this early developmental perspective and integrate it into systemic therapy to be more inclusive of fathers and their very young children. So you may be a clinician or therapist, teacher, home visitor, or a variety of other different work professions. And hopefully some of the ideas and concepts that we talk about will help you all find ways to integrate this experience into your work with families. As we get started, we just want to share about who we are. I believe this self-perspective really helps give y'all, the viewers, information about like how we approach the work, and our lived experiences, at least for me, do shape kind of how I approach it. So I grew up in a diverse family structure, meaning I had two stepdads, meaning a stepdad and a dad, a mom and a stepmom, and then was also the oldest of about 32 grandchildren, meaning I got a lot of experience of being a guy that was involved in shaping development. And these types of experiences, in addition to being a therapist that works primarily with adolescents and their parents, helped me kind of formulate and crystallize some of these ideas. So that's the perspective I approach it at. Sheila, can you kind of introduce yourself and help us understand how our paths originally crossed?
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in rural southern Utah, and then I've lived in the urban areas along the Wasatch Front for almost 30 years now. Like Ty, I also grew up in a diverse family structure. My biological father died from surgery complications when my mother was just 3 months pregnant with me. So I was never able to meet him. And my stepfather was the dad I knew. I was a teen parent, had my first baby at 17. We joined the military. I had the opportunity to live overseas in Europe, and kind of came of age in that situation. And those are really the backgrounds that I bring to this. I was able to eventually go to higher education and get a degree, thanks to a parent that really encouraged me. I met Ty. Our relationship started while working on a project to adapt a practical strength-based measure that had been developed by a professor and director of the Disability Center, Mark Insonetti and Lori Rogman, Piccolo observation of mother-child interactions. And I wanted to work on adapting that for fathers. So I'd received a grant to do that work, and I was recruiting students to work on the project, and Ty applied for one of those positions. We were able to work together for several years, continued to do research with dads and that common interest since then. During that research project, we observed early father-child play interactions with over 400 diverse families from across 11 sites across the US. We field tested that observation also with home visitors and their practical use with fathers in our local early Head Start program. As this project finished, both Ty and I, we just moved on to other adventures, but we've continued to advocate for inclusive practice of fathers. I'm an early childhood educator by heart. I was a classroom teacher for about 9 years before going on to graduate studies. So I continue to do the work in that field as well as early intervention fields. I work with home visiting programs as well, and Ty in clinical practice, focusing on youth and children. Ty just recently reached out to me to collaborate again. Ty, what are some of the reasons you wanted to get that collaboration going again?
I think that what my experience with the Piccolo measure, which is a measure that helps us observe father-child interaction, so father interacting with this kiddo, I noticed that we could use really strengths-based processes that they didn't teach us in our therapy programs. And what we were hoping was to find ways to include some of this information in more intervention work to get fathers more included, because they do influence children's social and emotional development. And that's what I'm hoping maybe you can teach us a little bit about on this slide here, Sheila.
Yeah, so, one of the first questions we ask, why is that very early father-child interaction matter? So much of the theory on early development has really been developed primarily on mothers. So what we know from emerging research and theory really suggests that the quality of early father-child relationships do play an important role, or can play an important role, in fostering young children's later social emotional development. And it really does so by supporting these broad-based developmental competencies, secure attachment, confident exploration, and the ability to regulate and express those emotional experiences. These broad-based social emotional foundations, really when those are in place, ensure that children have a firm foundation for all those later outcomes we hope for kids. They may be ready for school, that they'll be academically successful. They'll experience lifelong social competence and enjoy their relationships with others. And they'll have mental health.
And I think, tandeming off that, we really see this as an opportunity to prevent mental health concerns. One of the frustrations as a therapist with a teenager that I work, or like with teenagers I work with, is that they come in and I go, wow, if we could have just gone up the river and got them before they were thrown in, we could actually help prevent some of these issues from occurring. But the issue is that a lot of treatments in childhood disorders focus more on treating the kid or treating the parent directly. And a common dynamic in the therapy field is to focus on only the mother-child relationship and avoid including very young children in therapy at all. Or we just rely on the indirect effects of strengthening parent mental health or the couple relationships, perhaps in the attempt to avoid pathologizing young children. But this perspective may be missing opportunities to improve some of our therapeutic effectiveness, which is really kind of what sparked this entire idea.
So when we consider why early father-child interaction might be especially important for us to support in our early intervention, the research really suggests that when we use a systemic, family-centered approach that are inclusive to fathers and also focus on the quality of relationship the fathers are having with children, this can really increase our effectiveness in ways that are going to benefit both the children and the fathers, but the families as well. So for instance, when a father's direct interaction with children is more positive, we find that mothers' interactions might be more positive with children too. And mothers might also be more supportive of that relationship with fathers, even if it's a non-resident father, right? So when the dad's interactions and that relationship quality is more positive and high, moms are more likely to support that relationship. And this reduces co-parenting conflict in the family. So as fathers become more confident oh, did you have something to add, Ty?
Nope, go ahead.
Just as dads become more confident in interacting with their children, the other thing we notice is they start to enjoy that role even more. And as that enjoyment expands, it's like a magnifying effect for the relationship. And fathers that are engaged with children very early. So one reason we really advocate it for early intervention approaches, if we get dads engaged really early, it increases the chance that those dads are going to stay engaged with those children throughout their lives.
And this is really the focus of the presentation today, is considering how to better facilitate early father-child relationships. So we're going to watch this brief example of a father and engage with his child as the child is, reading a book. And this video is from a colleague of Sheila's and their family, and they were kind enough to share. And as you watch, we're just hoping that you can maybe notice some ways that the father supports the child's social and emotional development. And after the video, we'll just pause briefly, or even during the video, if you can just throw into chat, what are you noticing the father do that might actually support social and emotional development? Maybe their attachment, maybe exploration, regulation, or social competence. Now, we're going to give me just a second to pull this video up. And of course, it disappeared. Okay. Oh, It's making me enter a password. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, everyone should be able to see that now. We'll just watch about a minute of it.
Okay, bud. I'm gonna put your shorts on. Okay. Now we got your bum changed. I'm gonna put your shorts on. Where's your foot? Can I put your foot in it? Can I put this foot in? Very good. Okay, now that foot in. Now this foot. Good job, bud. That was awesome. Okay. I know it can be a little frustrating, but that's okay. I'm gonna lift your bum up so we can get it up and over. And then we can go read a story with mom. Is that okay? Yeah? Are you excited? Ugh.
Do you want to read your favorite story?
Do you want to read your favorite story? Yeah? You think so? The daddy book.
Daddy book is so fun.
Ugh. Okay. Alright. I love you, Dad. I could make up a song to say I love you. I care. And I would sing right along. Uh-oh. What's going on?
Do you want Mickey?
Did your Mickey? Would that help? And I would sing right along because I love you. I care. Making.
All right, we'll pause it there just for the sake of time. If you wouldn't mind now, maybe take a second to reflect on kind of what you noticed and throw it in the chat, and maybe we can share a couple of those ideas as they come up. Positive praise, eye contact, physical contact, validation, physical closeness. It's like y'all have done this before. It said diaper change was not a task, but engaged interaction. Yeah, calm demeanor, touch boundaries, labeling emotions. Yeah, y'all have done this a few times. That's awesome to see a lot of those responses. Those are a lot of things I noticed too. So understanding how we can facilitate this father engagement, these types of developmentally supportive interactions with young children in flexible ways. And that's some of what the dad did in that video was flexible, changed away from the reading the book to engage with some of the feelings, is really the heart of the matter for this presentation. And we call this approach developmental parenting. So our goals for today are pretty straightforward. We're going to help walk through what is developmental parenting and able to ground in why this approach can be so useful in supporting fathers. Next, we're going to explore ways to more easily observe a father's natural parenting strengths that support the child's social and emotional development. And lastly, we're going to discuss a few ideas about how to create opportunities for facilitating fathers' developmental parenting with young children in your practice. And we just ask that you continue to be aware of the thoughts and feelings you have as we discuss working with fathers, because as I've noticed in working with dads, they may experience our interactions a little bit differently. And it's important to understand what we're both doing to facilitate and kind of the father's experience. Oh man, my computer is being a little laggy. I'm sorry. There we go.
Okay, so when we think about what is developmental parenting, we actually have a little book written by this, and this is by Dr. Lori Rogman, Lisa Boyce, and Mark Innocente. And we're just going to quickly explain the key components of this. Developmental parenting is a research-based practical approach to facilitating early parenting. It's not a program or a curriculum. It is more like a philosophy and a flexible approach originally developed for home visitings, but we've also found a variety of intervention specialists, including clinicians and therapists, have found it very useful as well. So when we think of developmental parenting for fathers, we're interested in the kind of everyday parenting that helps children develop and create relationship patterns that support their social emotional needs. For example, when a father comforts an irritable infant, many of you picked that up in the last video of dad responding to the little discomfort that baby was showing, cheers on a toddler's first steps, playfully wrestles or has conversations with a preschool. As these examples illustrate, developmental parenting is also parenting that develops over time and adjusts to the young child's fast-paced developmental changes. So that's one of the challenges here, is young children develop very, very fast. And we also want to equip parents with the sensitivity and ability to notice those changes and make adjustments to their parenting that are matching the unique needs of their child.
And to this point, it's also important to remember that parents can keep developing too. This suggests that parenting is sensitive to both encouragement and support, and that parents can develop as their children develop, even when parents are in stressful situations. So Sheila, what exactly might a systemic therapist look for in a father-child interaction to spot this developmental parenting?
Yeah, that's really a great question. So as we surveyed the research, really found 4 areas. Parents do many different things, including providing good nutrition and keeping children healthy and safe. But we were interested in focusing in 4 areas of parent-child interaction. Is what came out of the research. First one is affection or parental warmth. The second one is responsiveness and sensitivity. The third one is encouragement of exploration and that the young child's sense of self. And the fourth one is teaching. Each of these domains is marked in our research by multiple parenting interactions. We found parents just naturally engaged in during daily activities like we just saw in that video with their children. The domains of, and all 4 of these domains of parenting behaviors are linked to those broad-based developmental social emotional competencies we introduced earlier: secure attachment, confident exploration, regulation, and communication.
So now we want to walk you through a little bit on what this may actually look like. So I'm going to go back to my undergraduate days when I was working with Sheila on the Piccolo and the Piccolo D. And for those that you may not heard of it, that Piccolo is an observation of parents' direct interaction with their children. So it's basically a tool that we can use to say, hey, these interactions seem to support the developmental outcomes we all want. It was designed to be easy to use for practitioners and parents. It's always strengths-based. I think one of the famous things I always say is no parents ever scored a 0. And it's a naturalistic observation, meaning you can be and watch it happen in time. While it's not a clinical or diagnostic assessment, it can be really useful for helping find the good stuff in father's interactions. We've provided a free version here, and you can actually find this by just typing into Google 29 Things Piccolo. And it's been translated across across cultures and in multiple languages, and we still see similar results. This is the good stuff that seems to support good outcomes. We will practice using this list. We probably won't get to it this time, but I'm curious, Sheila, is there anything you would want to note from the research that we found with the Piccolo D project?
Yeah, one of the things that's really important to know, so this is a 29 things list that is a handout that we actually give to parents themselves and help them notice their own parenting strengths and style. And that's just important to note that our goal isn't that all dads or all moms do all the things on this list. Rather, we use the list to identify individual parenting strengths and help fathers kind of find their own comfortable relationship style with their children. One thing to notice is that everything on this list is a positive thing that will support development if children do it. This is a strength-based tool, and it's intended to be used with a strength-based approach to supporting parenting. In our research with over 1,300 video observations of fathers from really diverse circumstances, the cool thing is we found at least 1 or 2 strengths for each father. So a lot of home visitors and practitioners notice how important that is, that sometimes it's difficult for them to find a strength of some of the parents they work with. And many parents have never been aware of a strength or had good things said about their parenting before. So we're quite confident that we can find at least a glimmer of a strength in nearly all parents that we work with when we look for these things.
I think one note I'll just try and throw in there is that I actually use this fairly often in my therapy with parents, especially newer parents, because they'll often come to me and say, like, Ty, there's not a parent manual. And I go, I know, I wish there were. But there are these things that we know that are supportive of outcomes. And I show them the list and they often go, hey, I already do a lot of these. And I go, exactly. That's the cool thing. Parents are already doing what's supportive. And especially when you're coming from stressful environments, that often isn't how it feels. It feels like you're not doing all of the things that are actually supportive. So being able to just orient them to that can be pretty useful.
One thing I'll mention that this list doesn't make really explicit is in the official Piccolo observation tool, all of these things are organized in those 4 domains we mentioned before: affection, responsiveness, encouragement, and teaching.
And because of sake of time, just because I've been a little bit slow and dragged on, we're going to skip watching the video again. But I do want to just briefly say that some of those things y'all mentioned, like speaking warmly, smiling at the child, being physically close, those are actual Piccolo items that are included that y'all had already mentioned. So it's pretty cool that you're already oriented to this way of thinking. So now if we can switch into, when is supporting developmental parenting important?
Yeah, so supporting father's developmental parenting tends to be especially important when families are experiencing difficult circumstances. During these times, developmental parenting may be more difficult for fathers.
And as systemic therapists, we work with these families experiencing depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance use, incarceration, and struggling to overcome past trauma and relational issues. And for some families, the focus of service is solely on the adult needs, often mother or the father. Addressing these needs really is critical, but addressing only the adult need leaves the child to cope on their own.
Right. During the weeks and months where a spotlight of the intervention is only on an adult needs, young children's development is still happening, and opportunities for young children to trust, play, and communicate are now lacking. As very young child tries to cope with these new, strange, frightening situations on their own, they might be overcome with fear, a sense of loss, and they might be more likely to be learning to be more unsure, anxious, without support, and timid. They may experience recurrent problems as they get older in sleeping, eating, emotions, and behavior.
And then as child's physiological, emotional behavior problems increase, what we often see is it compounds the father's stress. And when father coping resources are already stretched too far, they may feel overwhelmed and unable to meet the demands, then disengage from the supportive relationships with their children and their families. This might sound very familiar to clinicians in the audience because this is the point the families are often sent to clinical services. Then as interventionists, we jump in and try to intervene directly with the parent. But here is where we are suggesting a more inclusive and preventative approach where we facilitate these strengths-based relationships that we've kind of primed you all for.
So what we're really advocating here is what we call a parenting focus model, where what's in the spotlight of the intervention approaches is the relationship between father and child. A parent-focused approach, like we mentioned, leaves the spotlight on the parent's need and leaves young children to cope more on their own. While a child-focused model, when the interventionist works primarily only with the child, is limited to the time that developmental and intervention specialists can spend with the child. This can also undermine parenting efficacy. I still remember a time when a speech therapist told me I shouldn't try to do any of the intervention things with my child because I could do them wrong, and how disempowering that was, instead of engaging me and helping me learn those approaches. So the developmental parenting approach suggests that we shift from a parenting focused approach and we put those to a parenting focused approach, and we put those father-child relationships and everyday developmental support interactions to be the focus. Can you give us a quick example of this?
Yeah, I think one that actually is fun because it came to mind when we first created this, and then it happened again as we were preparing for this same meeting, was I was working with the parent I was working with the parent with a kiddo that was under 2. And as I was doing therapy with the mom, the kiddo started getting more impatient because mom's attention wasn't on him. She quickly called for her husband to come and grab their kiddo, and he came in and grabbed him and left. But it was at this time that my experience observing all those father-child play videos popped into my mind. I realized there might be ways to more directly include a parenting-focused approach by noticing and facilitating the interaction between the 3 of them. So we want to try to think through this maybe just a little bit. Oh, that script changed. That's my bad. So I think one of the things that we were trying to figure out with that family is are there ways to, instead of focus solely on the mother's depression, you could focus more on facilitating interaction. And as you all know, traditional therapy services present unique challenges to including these fathers, especially in considering payment for services. That being said, I found ways to work with this in the system, especially due to COVID-19, where everything went telehealth. You actually had families in their naturalistic settings, and you're able to work with them and facilitate these interactions. And so you can have a session now full of support that both addresses mom or dad's individual goals while also trying to facilitate some of those interactions that are going to be supportive of the child outcomes that we want. And so in that situation, he gently picked up his child, and as he was starting to fuss because mom attention was on the computer, I saw an opportunity to engage mom with dad to support the kiddo's feeling that was in it, very similarly to what happened in the video we watched previously. And once I said this, he directly stated to me that he appreciated being noticed. And this was a really big moment for this family because dad often felt like he wasn't parenting in the right way because his parenting looked a little different than mom's. And so by being able to see that, hey, he had a strength, he then started to be engaged more in. Where I've been seeing this family on and off for about a year, I've noticed and been able to track the change. Dad's increased in his engagement and he feels more confident. And he states that he largely credits a lot of that change to being noticed in some of those first interactions, which when you think about it, was just a small passing comment, which then made him go, oh, I matter and I influence development too.
Right. So these small things can lead to large wins. Ty, it sounds like you walked in with right attitude. You valued what including fathers could bring to the equation for the whole family. And you took those unique hardships and the way that particular family was experiencing them and found opportunities to help that connect them. By remaining flexible in those challenging circumstances, you found new ways to engage that father in direct interaction with his child just right there in their home. So the right attitude is really important. We found that fathers often say that their work and their family roles create a conflict, and they also experience social stigma. And these are all the reasons they have for disengaging in our program services. What we've learned is when practitioners are more responsive to father's strengths and encouragement, father engagement is higher. When father engagement is higher, mother parenting stress and child aggression got lower. So let's consider some of the ways we can be responsive to fathers. The practitioners that we've worked with have said they need to just be as sensitive to the needs and preferences of those dads. Some practitioners might work with the father alone for one visit and then the mother alone for one visit. And a lot of that depends on their family structure. And if they have younger children and the parents prefer to, trade off caring for a young infant or something like that. Some families like to have everyone together, and some people like to alternate those weekly visits. Another one is to be sure and include dads in the choices. When we're going to observe, we do recommend, like we were observing videos, to purposely set time for parents to play with their young children and watch for those strengths. And so we advocate for giving fathers a choice in planning what you'll do during the intervention time, choosing activities with their children, specific types of play that they engage in. And maybe where they want to start looking for their strengths, let them choose if they want to watch and think about teaching things or affection things. The great thing is all of those domains predicted a variety of outcomes, so we can't go wrong on where we start.
So being responsive to these father strengths and culture is key component of a facilitative approach. And this facilitative approach is about making it easier for fathers to support their own child's development by supporting the father-child relationship rather than jumping in. And I think the most notable example that Sheila shared there was when a speech language pathologist said, "You're going to do this wrong, so don't do it." Meaning she put a brick, like a real big brick wall between Sheila and her kiddo, which then once they leave the office, who's going to be supporting the development? So Sheila, how do we actually do this facilitative approach?
So we start by just observing. Fathers interacting with their children can be during daily activities or routine or playing. We recommend something they enjoy together in the home, or it can be in your program as well. This can be live, or you can video record it. Some programs use the phone of the parent themselves, and then they encourage the parent to watch it back as they look for strengths. Then we notice and comment on the developmental parenting interactions that we saw the dads doing, and we help them find their own comfortable style in creating that relationship with their child. I like to ask the parent what some of their hopes are for the relationship with the child, so I understand their value and their value system in that. And then the strengths that we see really tell us, a lot of practitioners are like, oh, but will that be accurate? Will that be valid? Won't parents just pretend to be something maybe they don't actually do? Well, we have some pretty good evidence that what we do see is what parents value, what they think is a good thing to be doing with their child, and what they're comfortable doing in public. So those are the things, and what they can do. So even though they might not always be able to do it, we do learn about what they're capable of doing. So focusing on those strengths really helps us honor each father as a person who can provide a good developmental experience for their child, even in the midst of difficult circumstances.
And I think this is really highlighted by that example I shared about when I was doing therapy with a mom and the dad came into the therapy session to grab the kiddo. There was a moment when he reached down and smiled at his child, became physically close to him, labeled his son's feelings in the moment, and then responded to them empathetically. These behaviors might sound more familiar to you now as they came from that Piccolo observation tool, and from the hours and hours of videos, my mind still thinks about it, and are all natural strengths that this father showed in that moment that I was able to help highlight. So Sheila, can you give us some specific examples of how you might frame the strengths-based feedback to a dad?
Right. So you might notice a dad like picking up on a child's cues of frustration and providing a little assistance. And then you could comment with something like, you noticed he got frustrated and you helped him figure out a new way.
Awesome. Is that, let's see. And then I think we've got you still up. I'm sorry.
Keep going. Okay, so then the second component, first we're going to notice the parent's strength, And we're going to see it and say it, or observe and comment. But see it and say it, sometimes easier for people to remember. And then we want to link that to the way it seems to be supporting that child's development. And often this comes out by just describing the way the child responds. So we have an example of that. So you might say, and you can even use questions to get the parent thinking about how that's impacting their child's development. How did he react to your suggestion? How might helping him when he's frustrated let him know you'll be there for him? So this is an example of connecting to the dad's values. A lot of dads, when I ask about what they hope for in the relationship with their child, they say they want their child to know they're always going to be there for them. So we can adapt our questions or feedbacks in ways that kind of sustain and affirm the values the parent's hoping to create. Yeah, the third one is encourage more of that positive interaction. So even if it is something that's popping up on there because the dad thinks that's something nice to do and is kind of putting on his best performance for you, that's great. You're going to encourage him when else other times he can do it. So some examples of that are, what other ways do you show him you can be there? And sometimes if in this case, the dad was kind of doing it in a way that might be encouraging to help a child persist and solve a problem, sometimes you can encourage a dad to build those strengths in other areas, like to show the child how to be there in a way that's more warm and affectionate, or that's using a lot of conversations. And then what else could you help when he's frustrated? So you can help the dad problem solve a little bit. What other times during the day do you notice frequent frustration coming up? And how can you use this skill there with the child?
Yeah, and for me, this approach has been super useful in finding ways to actually deliver strengths-based feedback, because that's not naturally taught or used in a medical model. Because the medical model that we have is very deficits-based or strength, weaknesses. It's these things are going wrong, you need to fix them, rather than, hey, we can address these needs by building on the strengths you're already doing, which is more likely to keep fathers or parents in general engaged. And it's going to help continue to build warm and supportive relationships, which are really important for stress. So to summarize, these three strategies we could use to facilitate a father-child interaction are: first, to observe and comment with strengths-based feedback. Second, focus on the child development by asking about the child. And three, encourage just more father-child interaction in general. It's pretty interesting, like my wife will tell me when we go to a mechanic, she never gets looked at and they always ignore her and talk to me. But when I go to the doctor's appointments, it's like I'm not even in the room and they're always talking to my wife for our stepkid, like my stepkiddo. And I'm just like, oh, that's so interesting, especially about social and emotional health, because that's where I'm the expert at. And they're like ignoring me. And my wife actually knows more about car mechanics than I do because her dad mechanicked a lot. So, these stereotypes that we have aren't always that useful. So if you're considering when you're working with, parent-child interactions, or even in that video that we had, I would just kind of think of like, how could we use these developmental parenting traits you identified and the strategies we gave you to give feedback to that father we watched? What might be some of those things you could have said? And you can throw those in the chat. And I think due to sake of time, I'll just read them here at the end, because I think we have a little Q&A, if I remember right. But I'll let Sheila kind of close us off first.
Yeah, so, we conducted this focus group with dads to ask them what it really meant to them to be included in these program services in a developmental parenting approach. And this was kind of a summary of what they said that illustrates that sense of belonging that was encouraged. It just helps us to have a relationship with our kids. They're so willing to be there and help us finding our own selves and letting us know we are capable and able to accomplish everything we need to do as a parent.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. And I appreciate you being flexible with my out of practice slide scrolling. It was a little bit to manage with everything on the screens because I have 3 screens. But I think we'll turn back the time over to Janelle now and then to run it. I don't know what happens next, so I will be quiet now. Thank you so much for your time though. And thank you, Sheila.
No, thank you both of you for all that great information and wonderful resources with everything. We're going to just turn it up, be able to do a few quick Q&A if anybody wants to shout any questions or put those in the chat.
Yeah, I would love to hear experiences you've had working with dads.
I was just going to put mine on full screen so I could see anybody. I really appreciated the video and just those 3 topics. That's something in early intervention. Hopefully we all utilize with our families. And it's a great perspective to see to do that better with dads. Okay, well, it does not look like anybody has any questions or, oh, Pat. Oh, okay, never mind. I was slow on the take. So Pat says, my experience with parents, especially new parents, that dads are just learn differently and support differently. Then there's a couple of questions. One is, oh, my thing is not working. Sorry. How do you approach encouraging mothers to let fathers be more involved and not the gatekeeper?
Yeah, I think there's 2 questions kind of in that. I think Robin's question of what do you do when moms are not willing to give dads their own, I think maybe related to that as well. Yeah, their own method. I'm just watching these other questions as they come down.
Yeah, I'll briefly respond because I know we've got a little bit tight timeline for y'all's session. I think the thing that I try to do, and we didn't cover as much today, is as a therapist, I'm always trying to orient folks to their own values and what they most care about in parenting. And most often, both moms and dads share very similar values in what they want for their kiddos. And so there are multiple roads to Rome, is what I always tell them. And those roads might have different bumps on them or different experiences, but those diversity and experiences are actually going to help facilitate those outcomes you want. So if we can be flexible with what behaviors we might see, meaning like my way of roughhouse play is actually really affectionate and warm, and Sheila can actually speak to how dads parent maybe a little bit differently. But both of those things are facilitative of the outcome. So if we can always redirect about what is the core characteristics or the qualities we want to show up rather than just the goal, we can usually get both parents to say, okay, we're doing this as a team, even in diverse family structures, like in co-parenting when parents are divorced. I just did this actually yesterday with some parents, and the dad was especially surprised. Oh, I've been to 4 therapists and none of the therapists will talk to me. And so just by being willing to include him, he was like, oh, I do matter. I want to be more engaged. And then kiddo felt more supported because now dad's engagement's there. So I think to me, it's always orienting back to what do we actually care about and how do we help each other reach that goal? Sheila, can you speak maybe just very briefly to what are the differences we see? Because if I remember right, you did some of the rough and tumble play type work and you kind of know some of those differences on how fathering behaviors may look a little different than mothering behaviors. Is that true?
Yeah, we probably found more similarities than differences. Probably one of the ones that was most obvious was tone of voice. We found that dads maybe didn't fall into that mother ease, parent ease kind of tone of voice quite so often as mothers did. And depending on an observer's background, they may or may not think the dad's voice was sounding warm. So that's one example of that. But kind of an interesting thing is that the PICO measure, those 29 things, were also developed to be extremely parent friendly. And sometimes it can be a little useful as you're going through that process of helping parents identify what their own strengths are and what they do well and how they're complementary to one another. And then they can really appreciate that they both do certain things like offering children choices or encouraging children to do things on their own. But they do it in slightly different ways, but those things are still happening. So that is one of the kind of cool thing of the Piccolo tool, was really designed to support that. And not only with moms and dads, but each parent might do some of those things. The way they smile at children might look a little different. The way they're enthusiastic with children might look a little different for their personality. It just helps us widen our lens and also kind of check our own biases in watching dads.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sheila. And then I think we've overdone our 45 minutes. So now I'm being quiet.
Well, thank you again so much for both of you sharing that information, sharing those resources with us. That was a great discussion. I know that you guys are really busy, and if you need to jump off the call, feel free. I'm going to turn the time over to Caitlin, who is going to share her case with us. So, Caitlin.
All right. Thanks, Janelle. I just thank you, Ty and Sheila. That was really kind of inspiring, as being somebody in a situation where I'm trying to help my kid, do what he needs to do to like live and thrive. And as a mom, I tend to not think of my husband as, not that he's not important, but I tend to think that I have to do everything. So that's really it's good to have like some hard data that says like dad needs to help. So anyways, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So I'll start talking about what I'm supposed to talk about. So some background on me. I'm a parent, obviously. I have a 2-year-old and an 8-month-old who is now like over being by himself right now. So you might hear him in the background. So let's see. Sorry, I've got some talking points. So my 2-year-old son has a speech delay, and we're kind of thinking autism maybe, but we're not really sure. But we've been working with Janelle. I'm sorry, I'm gonna pick up my baby. He's going crazy. Sorry, one sec. Oh my gosh, I broke it. Okay. Can you guys hear me? You can. Okay. All right. So yes, 2-year-old, speech delay, possibly autism. He is nonverbal, except he has recently started saying a couple of words, like he'll say off and turn on the light switch. He'll turn it on and off and say off. He started waving goodbye to grandma and blowing kisses and doing a couple of things like that. He started imitating some things. So we have seen improvement. It's been awesome. So I have my 2-year-old, my 8-month-old, my husband and I are married. And my husband spends most of his day at work and school, and I work from home. So I'm alone with the kids a lot of the time. So that is probably like one of the biggest, I guess, barriers you would say. Is a lot of it is just me, and then also trying to work and also trying to support my son who needs a little bit of extra care. And really, he doesn't have any like weird behavior stuff. So honestly, he's really pretty easy. He kind of does his own thing. It's just that like trying to interact with him, and it's hard to interact with him when I'm working. So let's see. So a primary area of concern I'd like to kind of talk about is right now is potty training. He constantly has like bloody butt diaper rashes. It's so bad. We want to start potty training, but all the advice that I read online is, you know, have a conversation with your kid, talk to him about it. And I have a nonverbal child, so how do I do that? You know, I think he's smart enough. I think he can learn how to do it. I just don't know how to approach it from his particular perspective. Especially with him, you know, you can hear him in the background. He makes these sounds. This is like his verbalization is just grunts a lot of the time. But he doesn't really have like bad temper tantrums too, but you know, it's not crazy, I don't think. So my goals with him, obviously, the big one is communication. I'd like him to be able to tell me, you know, what his needs are, if he has a poopy diaper, if he wants a snack or whatever. A lot of the time it's just, you know, hey, I have to kind of guess, like, hey, do you want this? We've gotten to the point where I can say, hey, do you want a snack? And he'll walk to the snacks kind of as an answer. So I think it's better than nothing. But anyways, that is a big goal, is getting him to communicate. And I think that's it, unless anybody had any questions or anything I could clarify.
So if I just summarize, you want some help on potty training and maybe some ideas on some communication strategies. Would that be
Yes.
accurate?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. I will open it up for a few minutes to do some follow-up questions. And if not, then we will go into our breakout groups.
How is his understanding of language? Do you feel like he understands you when you speak to him or give him directions?
Yeah, he understands a lot more than I think he should. It's kind of weird. Like, I can ask him to go do something or go grab something, and if he feels like it, if he's having a day where he wants to participate, then yes, he'll go do the thing.
Caitlin, if I could ask a question also based on today's didactic part. You said dad's at work most of the time, you're at home alone most of the time. How does he interact with dad compared with you when it comes to communication, when it comes to having needs met and that sort of thing? Because I know sometimes if they're always coming to one parent, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, well, honestly, he doesn't come to either of us to ask for something. So it tends to be me offering things. If he's, you know, whining or like, that's usually how we know he needs something, is if he just starts whining. But yeah, he doesn't really come to us per se.
I do have to give kudos to both parents. So both parents are always at the therapy visits.
That may, depending on the time of day, right? But we do-
Majority of the time.
yeah, we try to schedule around it. And now that I've seen this presentation, I think I'm gonna see if he would be willing to do the classes like every other time, see if maybe he would go instead of me sometimes. That would be probably a good idea. Based on what I learned today, you guys are great. Thank you for that.
Any other questions? Oh, Ellie, it looks like you came off mute.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask a couple questions. Have you noticed if he's dry when he wakes up from sleeping at night, or is he typically wet when he wakes up?
Yeah, he's wet when he wakes up. I mean, last night, I think he pooped in the middle of the night because he woke up with poop, and I mean, his butt is so bad right now. It's awful. It's really bad.
Okay.
Does he have siblings?
Yeah. So we've got this one, the little one, and then my husband has a 9-year-old son who is with us like every other weekend.
Does he imitate? Will he copy something that you do? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, he has started imitating, and he seems interested when we go to the bathroom. Like if I sit to pee, like he's got to get in there, like a front row seat. So he seems interested in the process, I think. And we've got him a potty. Dad tried, I guess I should go back. Dad tried potty training around like 18 months when my second son was about to be born, because he was like, I don't want to in diapers. And his 9-year-old was very precocious. So he was potty trained so early, and he was like, I did it with one, I can do it with another, and that, I mean, that ended so quickly because, Jet was not wanting to sit on the toilet, and my husband kind of yelled at him. And so now it became like this power struggle and like a negative thing. So I told him like he needed to stop and wait for a while because it just turned into like a bad deal, I think.
No, that sounds very wise.
Yeah, that's,
Um,
I feel like it should be positive, right? You don't want to like yell your kid into potty training. I don't think that would work.
No, I think you're very wise. That's right on. And then I think my last question was, like, what's he interested in? Does he have a favorite TV show or a favorite toy or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, he's all about his monster truck. He loves to read books. Yeah, that's pretty much the two like constant things. He gets into different stuff, of course, sometimes, but those are his things. And I have put a basket full of monster trucks and books by the potty in the bathroom. So trying to like kind of make it like a welcoming space. I just don't know how to like start and sit, I don't know what to do. Like anyways, yeah.
May I offer?
I would love, yes.
Yeah, he's not ready. I mean, if he's
No.
still wet when he wakes up, he's neurologically not ready. So it has nothing to do with behavior. It has nothing to do with him being naughty. He simply doesn't connect that need to, go to the bathroom on a higher level. So I think what you're doing is great, but the diaper rash is concerning. And so have you talked to your pediatrician about what to do? Because that could also bother him.
Yeah. I have a steroid cream I put on him, and I took him off gluten and dairy.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's really important to look at, is it painful for him to sit because of the diaper rash?
and it's caused issues with diaper changes too, because he doesn't want a diaper change, it hurts, so.
Right. So I think a further investigation into the diaper rash and trying, so I'm only doing this because I've seen lots of diaper rash and I've worked with lots of kiddos. I'm not an expert on potty training, but neurologically he's not ready. And so I think it's going to be a time.
So do I just wait until he wakes up dry?
Well, that's one indicator, like Ellie said, but it's also the interest. And he's not verbally saying, you're not having a conversation about, big boys do this, let's put your big boy underwear on, all of that sort of thing. So I think he needs to be more developmentally ready for this process. And I don't know if anybody else agrees, but
The
patience.
hardest part.
Okay, well, we are going to go into our breakout groups to see if we can come up with some ideas for potty training and communication. Hub members, if you will take notes, that would be fantastic.
So Janelle, is this
So you should have you should have a notification to go into a breakout room. So just go into it.
Okay.
And then Sheila and Ty, I didn't know if you would want to go into a breakout group or if you want to jump off.
Unfortunately, I'm got a meeting that started at 1, but this was really interesting. And I wanted to ask a question, Janelle, actually. Is there like speech language pathologists that work with assistive communication techniques for kiddos? They often use charts and things. Is that something that would apply in this situation? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, it would. And that is definitely something that we would bring up during her visits. I work with her. I go out into the home quite frequently. She's never brought up potty training. So the fact that she brought that up to talk with our group, that was a great topic. So, but yeah, those are things that we work on during home visits. And
That's just it. I just work with a lot of autistic kiddos, and that's one thing that a lot of parents struggle with is like, if receptive vocabulary is not the same, what do you do? And I go like, with my speech language pathologist friends always tell me that. So I was just curious. Anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah,
letting me
yeah.
in.
Fantastic. Jennifer, which room am I supposed to put you? Who am I supposed to put you
So
in?
I'm interpreting for Ariana and for Melissa Julian. But
Oh,
I'm not
okay,
sure.
they're both in the same one. So let me put you in there. In 1 second. You should be in they're in room 1.
Okay, so I was asked to join group 3, but I was trying to see what.
Let me move you. So when I was doing the groups, I did not do that correctly. Where are you? Move to group 1. Okay, now you
Thank
should
you.
be in the right
Thank
group.
you.
Sheila, thank you so much for joining.
Well, can I just have a quick question? Do you have a count of participants that were here today?
So we had 42 on the call.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Have a great
so
day.
much. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. I think everybody's back from the breakout groups. So whoever took notes in those groups, if you will just email me the notes to janelle.preston@usu.edu, I will get those compiled and put those on our Canvas, as well as send them to Caitlin. I'm so glad that she was able to join and share the information with us. We will be having our session in December. It is going to be on, Shelby, help me out, feeding, right? Feeding. So we'll be talking about feeding in December. So everybody enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining.